If there's any way I could elevate the birth mother story, because if you know one birth mother, you don't know every birth mother. If you know one adoptive mom, you don't know every adoptive mom. And if you know one adoptee, you don't know every adoptee. And we all, like every human, has our own lived experience.
Welcome to Vulnerability Muscle, the inspiring podcast challenging norms and helping you redefine vulnerability as a strength. I'm your host, Reggie D. Each episode of Vulnerability Muscle dives into a variety of topics such as mental health, social issues, and mindset shifts. We explore the power of vulnerability and fostering meaningful connections, healing, building resilience, and promoting personal growth. Sometimes these conversations are uncomfortable, but good workouts often are. So join us and flex that vulnerability muscle. Welcome to Vulnerability Muscle. I'm your host, Reggie D. And today with me, I have a very special guest. This is Francine Apy. Francine is one of my classmates at the University of Pennsylvania, but beyond that, she is a phenomenal human. I'm going to read her bio. Francine is a flourishing and well-being strategist, speaker, writer, and founder of Soul Filling. With 25 plus years in HR leadership, Francine, uh, w- with 25 plus years in HR leadership and graduate studies in applied positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, she helps workplaces, schools, and mission driven organizations build cultures rooted in well being, resilience, and human growth. She also brings more than 30 years of lived adoption experience to her work through Soul Filling, where she supports compassionate, reflective, and growth oriented conversations across the adoption journey. Francine is known for combining evidence based insight with real world wisdom in ways that are practical, meaningful, and this part I particularly love, deeply human, because I feel that Francine is one of the most, she exudes joy. I think you'll find that in also authenticity and honesty. And so I'm so excited. Francine, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Reggie. I want to read your bio back to you now.
If you can find one, I don't think there are any bios about me out there.
I've got to find a bio, and we got to work your bio and make sure your bio is front and center. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we hop into it today, we are just coming off of our last on-site. So, the on-site for our program, it's been almost a year-long program in studying applied positive psychology, and there's been a hybrid mix of virtual sessions and in-person sessions, and we just finished our last in-person total, like all sessions. We finished our last one, but it was in person, and it was an emotional experience. Having built relationships with people over the course of this year and professors and our cohort alike. um I wanted to ask, I want to do a 2-word check-in with you, just how you're feeling. Where's your body, where's your mind in this moment, with 2 words?
I'm going to go back to the two words that have been coming back to me throughout the semester, and it's rigor and retreat.
Mm.
And Penn does such a beautiful job, I think, balancing those two words. I think we all knew that Penn was going to give us some rigor in the academics and research and challenge us. I hadn't written a research paper in over 30 years.
Wow.
But what I wasn't expecting was the retreat, the heart, the community, the ability of people that, 9 months ago, we didn't know each other, right? And we walked into that room as strangers and now leaving as friends in these incredible deep relationships. So coming off of the weekend, it's a little bit of a struggle to get moving again, right? To get into that space of flow, that we talk about too at Penn. Like we don't want to just be hanging out and not thinking and working. We want to be challenged, but we don't want to struggle. And
Yeah.
so when you come off of MAP, you have to get back into flow again, because even though it was our last class, we still have assignments to complete. And so my two words are rigor and retreat. I'm keeping in front of me, and I'm giving myself a little bit of grace these last couple days of retreat, of just like sleeping. We
That's
lost
good.
some sleep this past week. So sleeping. Yesterday I walked almost 10,000 steps, which I typically walk. So I walked because I didn't walk for 4 days because
Mhm.
we were in class. So I'm in the retreat mode a little bit of just refueling so I can get to that flow state again.
Good for you. I think that that's something when we are in such a rigorous environment and there's so many demands of us that we sometimes push and have learned to push through and continue to do that, but that's unsustainable. And we need those moments of retreat. I love that rigor and retreat. I think that's a good balance of life, of just having those two as we go along. I like that. I like that.
You can
Let me
you
think of
can
two
do it.
words. Yesterday was like I was exhausted yesterday. I lost my voice screaming at the top of my lungs with one of our classmates, Jason, in the streets of Philadelphia. And congratulations and pride for all that was this year. So I'll be a little bit more somber today, but today I'm feeling two words. I would say one, grateful, and family.
Mm.
And the grateful part is life. I'm just so grateful for life, the ups, the downs, the duality of life that is it's beautiful and it creates a whole and complete version of me and you and everyone that exists when we honor that duality. And then family, we're going to be talking about adoption today. And we're going to be talking about family and how families show up in so many different ways. And it's wild. I just, right before the onsite, I posted a poem that I wrote, and it was called Families, but it was stylized in a unique way where it was F dot am I question mark lies. And it's my
Oh.
relationship with blood family and a very complicated relationship with the concept of family. And yet it ends with talking about chosen family and how that ends in ILY, which I see as I love you. And so I'm excited to dive into this and talk about all of it, all the complexity, and how we can see flourishing through the adoption process, through work, through school, through any community that we find ourselves in. So, how's that sound?
Wow, well, you went right to it. The tears are already welling up here, so I'm going to do the best I can to compose myself.
No need to compose yourself. You can
I can't
be,
read that poem. I have to read that poem, and that way you spelled families is beautiful.
but Francine, I want to know, and I ask everybody these questions. It's just three. These are the first things that come to mind. So, first impressions. You said you were thinking about vulnerability. You're thinking about questions I would ask, and this is the first. What comes to mind when you hear the word vulnerability?
Authenticity. So showing up as your most authentic self, and it probably uh, lacks anything in the realm of perfection. So it's human.
It's human. I love that. I want before I move on to the next one, it just reminded me. Marielle in our class, she posted something about a comment that James Powelski, our professor, made, and it was to be vulnerable is to show love, and I thought that that was so beautiful
Mhm.
because you think about we're in this program of the most accomplished positive psychologists in the world, and that is that is the true essence of it is showing up, showing love, being vulnerable, and embracing what is human. So I'm glad to hear those words. And yesterday I
Beautiful.
was asked what I thought of vulnerability, and I talk about it all the time, but I had never. I think I have in the past, but in that moment, what came up for me was trusting yourself enough to trust others, and
Mm,
so I really
that's the truth.
am leaning into that. What do you do to center yourself, to ground yourself, to find that retreat if you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed?
Um, well, I am a strong person of faith, so prayer is a standard go-to. Um, and I also have a pretty regular meditation and yoga practice, so it depends on what I'm channeling. If I'm afraid, I may go right for my rosary beads and just hold them and just be mindful of their presence and just ask. Sometimes I'll just close my eyes, and I someone gave me this imagery years ago, and I never forgot it. Is that when I'm in a space that I'm afraid or really grateful, to picture God like sitting next to you, His presence, like the whatever that is, and you try it sometime. I've given this tip to my husband when he's gone into very stressful meetings and something comes over you because all of a sudden you're not alone. Like, not alone. There's someone really big and powerful sitting next to me, and he's readily accessible. So for
Wow.
me, that is my go-to.
Mm, that's powerful. I love
And
that. Thank you for
always
sharing.
remembering the breath. The breath has to come first, right? If we're
Mhm.
holding our breath, I can remember my kids because I taught them some breathing exercises, and my youngest, I could still see him. And don't tell me to find my breath because it's gone. I can't, because I wanted them to know that if you could just find your breath, it's not going to make whatever happened go away, but it will help you process and take a next step forward. But if we
Mm,
hold our breath and we keep struggling with our breath, it's going to be hard for us to think.
that's so good. That's so good. Thank you for that. The breath is powerful because, when you think about our autonomic nervous system, we can't control our heart rate like readily. We can't control if we're sweating or not. We don't control those things, but we can control our breath. And our
Mhm.
breath is linked to regulating so many of those other bodily functions that tell us that we are calm, that we are safe, that we are okay in the space that we're in. And so learning to find your breath, I love that, is so critical. What is one of your favorite childhood memories, Francine?
One of my favorite childhood memories. Um, Probably just playing house. I was born to be a mom. So I loved that in my little house at 424th North Caroline Street. We had our basement, and half of it was where my sisters and we had the kitchenette set, and we had our baby doll cribs that I don't even know where they came from. And then on the other side, we got from school, like the old fashioned school desks. So half the basement was set up with, we could play school or we could play house. And just that, the play, the imaginary play of how many kids I was going to have and who I was going to marry and where I was going to live. Um, and then just all that imagination was always such a fun place for me. Um, So I'd have to say playing house and playing with my dolls. I mean, my dolls, they got sick. I put Vicks under their nose, bought real diapers, and
That's expensive, man.
I know, but we didn't throw them away. We used Scotch tape. We reused them a lot, but it was like this, like playing house and being a grown up, and it was fun to imagine that.
Oh, tell me about that because you mentioned that a couple times. Imagination. Tell me when was the last time you truly imagined something like a child?
Like to think through the lens of a child or something that I.
I guess just imagination. When was the last time you employed that in your life?
Well, I have to say, we were talking about Valerie Burton earlier, and I've known Valerie for 3 years now, and she offers a vision board exercise every year. So in January, I did her vision board exercise. I have my vision board here, and one of her questions is to challenge us, like the power of creating your vision of where you want to go. I think sometimes we're all in a hurry to
Mm.
get the degree, get the next job, read the next book, write the next paper, get the next house, do all the things, but do we know what the end game is, right? Do we know when do we know we arrived?
Mm.
And for me, one of the questions I ask often of myself, um, and I challenge those who I love of what if it all works out? What does it look
Yes.
like? Do you even
Yes.
know? Like, do you even know what it works out so you know that you've arrived? Like that
Mhm.
sense. So Valerie does a beautiful job of challenging us. It's a 5-day process from 12 to 12:30, so it's a quick bite size for 5 days. And so, yeah, I imagined in January, I did a lot of imagining of like what will December 31st, 2026 look like if it works out,
Mm.
right? So
Yeah.
I have my map, I have my alumni pen bumper sticker on my vision board. It's not on my car yet. So things
Yeah.
like that, I have pictures of, a lot of different things of what I imagine it all looking like if it all works out by the end of the year.
There's something so important about the vision and imagining life and creating that life. Like if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a goal, if you don't have a vision, it's very difficult to make that happen for yourself. Like I was telling my baby brother, he's just a freshman in college now, and I was like, everything that I've ever done, every place I've ever been, it started with me writing it down as a goal. Not that you gotta write it, you can make it a picture, you can make it a vision board, but it was something that, okay, I want that to be a goal of mine. And then you work backwards from that and start to apply, okay, if I have to get there, then this means I have to be here by halfway, and I have to be here a quarter of the way, and I have to do this tomorrow. And then you create the reality that you want to see. And you've done that. I mean, you haven't put the bumper sticker on your car yet, but next month, in 3 weeks, you will be able to. And
Yeah.
that's so cool.
And you know what it really does, Reggie, at the end of the day? I mean, it's fun. It's a fun exercise. But it also is a great reminder because let's face it, life gets in the way.
Mhm.
And there are
Mhm.
days that you're like, what was I thinking?
Mm.
And as we talked about in MAP, the thinking traps, right? Questioning yourself comes in, or are you really sure? Are you really, maybe that was too big of a vision. Like maybe you need
Mm.
to rewrite those things. And so it's just nice to look at it and be like, no, that's going to stay there for now. And even if I get half of it, it's still a win, right? Like, even if I get half of the things that I'd like to accomplish, it's still a win. So it helps in those days when you feel a little under inspired and not overly clear about where you're going. At least then you can look, well, is there one thing I can do, one step I can take in one of these areas today, just to kind of end the day on a more positive note than I'm feeling right now? So it
Mm.
gives me a compass of redirect.
I like this. I like this because you just sparked something for me. Earlier, you talked about knowing when you have arrived and then saying, life gets in the way. And I see life as the way and those redirects as a part of the journey to um, forcing us, pushing us, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, redirecting us to hopefully our ultimate purpose, even if it's rooted in pain, even if it's an uncomfortable situation. And I'm curious how that resonates with you of seeing not life getting in the way, but each and all those things that may get in the way as being a part of the process.
Right. And I'm glad you called that out because I didn't say it the way that I probably should have said it. What I meant was then life happens, right?
Mm,
And the reality sets in of the capacity and energy level you have to do X, Y, and Z. The unexpected comes into play, and you
mhm,
don't abandon your mission and your vision and your goal, but you may have to reshuffle the deck, right? You may have to say, you know what? maximize satisfies, right? I need to satisfy.
Explain those concepts.
Sure. So we talked a little bit first semester around that idea that sometimes you have to just satisfies. Well, let's just define them, right? So to satisfies is good enough, right? So you're going to buy new sneakers, you have a couple brands that you like, you're going to spend about 30 minutes on it, and then you're going to be done. If you were to maximize that process, you'd look at every sneaker that was ever made. You'd look at all the price points. You'd go to all the big box stores, and you'd spend all this time and energy on something to go purchase a pair of sneakers. So,
Mm-hmm.
in reality, when you look at your life and all the hundreds of decisions we have to make in any given day, week, month, year, if we are constantly putting so much energy and maximizing every decision from to the level of, am I buying a house? Am I buying sneakers? Am I thinking about a job change? You really have to decide how much is good enough and use the lens of satisficing, and how much something is maybe worth a deeper dive. And so that's one of the biggest things, in a newer word that I've been focusing on primarily this month with the end of MAP and so much work in our schoolwork and life. And our middle son is graduating from college too. Our youngest son is a freshman in college and coming home. Our oldest is trying to adult and find the job he really wants. Capacity. How much capacity do I have to give what I want to give to my family, to give to what I want to give to my husband in our 30 plus years of marriage, to give to my faith and my overall well-being of, working in some level of exercise and retreat, as well as doing as much and as well as I can within this program, because I chose to do this and I realize it's a very short window of time and an incredible privilege, to be there, and I want to get the most out of it. So all these things take my time and energy, and I only have so much capacity to be able to dedicate my chunks of time. So I can't maximize in every area every day. Some areas I have to satisfy.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And you've become such a accomplished individual. You've written books. I have one right here in front of me.
Dream,
We
dream.
got Dream Dream. What will you dream? I love this book. It's so good. And you have a book. Is it Brianna Goes Back to School?
Brianna's brave day at
Brave
school.
Day at School. Brianna's Brave Day at School. And then you also mentioned a book that you wrote, a family book that you wrote. Do you
Yeah, I
wanna?
didn't actually write mom's story. So my mom has a very amazing story. World War II survivor, lived in foster care most of her life, separated from family, um, was not reunited with her family, with her mom and dad, until the year I was born. So she was separated from five until the year I was born many years ago, and lived in foster care and came to the United States through Catholic Charities. And anyway, long story short, a friend of mine who's a Ukrainian Russian, mom was born in Ukraine, professor, she heard of my mom's story. And I'm like, would you write my mom's memoir? Because my whole life, I'm the
Mm.
youngest of four girls in 5 years. And if we ever needed an A in a paper, we just wrote mom's story. So if it was a
Wow.
philosophy class, if it was a religion class, if it was a history class, if it was just write mom's story because you know you're going to get an A. Mom's story. So we have all these renditions of mom's story, but I chose this woman to write mom's story because she could paint the backdrop, the
Mhm.
historical, the political environment, to really give mom's story the depth that it
Mhm.
needed to what she overcame. And unfortunately, she is alive. My parents are both alive, but they won't be at graduation. I was going to say you'll meet her, but if you were to meet my mother, you'd never know in a million years the life that she started out with on her journey. She's the epitome of positive psychology. So
Wow.
so I self-published that book. So I did the cover and I did the forward and the epilogue, and I brought it to life, but I didn't write the story. I just brought it to life.
In those years where you all would write your own renditions of your mom's story and then finally getting that final copy of that book, what are some lessons that you take from your mom's story, your mom's journey that you apply to your life today?
And I've known this for a long time, but as you get older, you just realize it more and more. And now being in this master's program, and when we talk about why Marty started MAP, right? Why he founded it is that he wanted to focus on what's going well, focus on the strong, focus on what's helping people thrive, even after extraordinarily difficult situations. He was very curious about the framework of those individuals, right? And that's what prompted him to study that further, and we're benefiting from it. And my mom, being 5 years old, hit with shrapnel, picked up by German soldiers, sent through hospitals, displaced from her parents, lived in foster care until she was 12 years old and came to this country. She had every reason in the world to not be a happy individual. She had every reason to be bitter and upset and angry with the world. Her and her two sisters were together. So luckily she wasn't alone. But she never had the opportunity to go to college. She came here and she just worked really hard. She was placed in the first grade at 12 years old because that's when she came and she needed to learn English. And long story short, she's a beautiful dancer. So she was able to teach dance and she was able to, just work and go to high school, never could go to college. And really, what it all comes down to is she made the most out of her story as she possibly could. And then having us, she instilled in us all of her energy and desire to create our own best stories in spite
Mm,
of whatever may come our way, in spite of. And
mm.
so she had those little self-help books. You are on the shelf growing up. You are who you think you are, not who somebody else thinks you are, and the importance of the language and how we talk to ourselves. And she wanted her daughters to go to college. And, my dad is first generation. He went to Notre Dame University, first generation to go to college. His parents never saw Notre Dame campus until graduation day, and he sold sandwiches on the train. His grandmother paid for his first year tuition. So, she so respected and admired his determination and desire to break the mold and be the first to go to college. And she just wanted to instill that in us, and that there's a lot of reasons in the world to be bitter, but you have a choice. So choose wisely.
Whoa, whoa! I just got goosebumps. Oh, I love that so much. When you talk about why Marty started this field, I one of the things that really stood out to me that I had never fully grasped before hearing him say it was, or reading it in one of his books, was that the absence of something bad does not equate to something good. And so you talked about an
Mhm.
experience where someone is experiencing something bad and has every right to be upset and be unhappy with the world. But then on the other side, there are a whole bunch of people who may not experience that, and yet they're still not flourishing. They're still not happy. But
Such an
to
important point.
It's so important. But to take those harsh experiences and still find the happiness and still create your own best stories. I wrote that down because I think that is fantastic. I love story. I love narrative. I love the most important story is the story that we tell to ourselves about ourselves. And how do we shape that so that people have a story in their mind of the goodness and the greatness that's within them and apply that to the world. That's Oh, that was so good. Thank you. You just gave me chills.
Thank you for asking. I hadn't talked about mom's story in a while, so thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your story. You, as much as you want to share about, I mean, you spent a great deal of your time in HR, and I'm sure you've met so many people throughout that process. You've understood organizations from the inside out and have helped to change culture in that.
What are some of the highlights of your HR career?
Yeah, what's really cool is I had an opportunity just last week to go back to my college campus and speak to juniors and seniors on positive psychology. And I share that because after I talked to them, I was talking to a smaller group. There was about 45 students there. And I just started talking about the importance of internships. Just do internships. I'm sure you're hearing this from your parents, but get an internship, even if it's not something you're excited about. And I start with that, Reggie, because I was an English communications major. I thought I wanted to go into radio and television. So I had an opportunity to interview at Channel 5 in Syracuse. And they said, you're going to be filing these maybe it wasn't
Mhm.
Channel 5. I don't want to throw Channel 5 under the bus. Whatever news station was in Syracuse, I went in for the interview and you're like, see all this filing. And then I went to Wegmans Food Markets. And Wegmans has a district office in Syracuse and they needed a intern in their consumer affairs department. I couldn't even spell consumer affairs. What's consumer affairs? I'm a senior in college, but I loved the person who interviewed me. I loved Wegmans as a company. And I just felt, hey, if she sees something in me and wants to hire me to be her intern, who am I to say no? So I jumped at it. And the last day of my internship, the director of HR came into the office and said, I wish you were graduating this year. You'd be great in HR. And I'm like, I am graduating. And that's how my HR career started. I never took an industrial relations course. I never took a culture course. I never took anything in management. It was purely that I had this opportunity in an internship and I got to have lunch, like their team meeting, lunch meetings. And I got to know Amy Tewksbury, the HR director, and she saw something in me. And that afternoon, I was called for an interview in Rochester, which is where they're based out of. And long story short, that was the beginning of my 25-year career in HR. And so I say that because had I not done that, I don't know if I would have ended up in HR because I was an English communications major. It's pretty broad. But I'm sure as heck glad that I did. And I learned more in those years than I could ever really tell about. But what stands out so much now in MAP, in reflecting on all those years, why I loved that career so much, is that the work that I did focused on my strengths.
Mm.
It focused on my strengths. So when you talk to young people today or people middle aged that they're struggling with kind of what's next, is I think we've lost sight of what our strengths are and what we're good at and what lights us up and what brings us joy. And we're working in these fields that don't do that at all. Or we've lost sight of, as our sweet Issa said, more hobbies that we stink at. Like of
Yeah.
really doing stuff that makes us come alive. And usually that's within our space of strengths, right? And so for HR, it put me in a help because I started out as a sociology major and then I realized I can't take everyone home with me and fix everyone's problems. And I switched to English. But what HR helped me to do is to help people see their fullest potential at work and help me sit arm in arm with the leadership team in building a culture that we felt good about, a culture that people were excited to come to work to, a culture that we were ranked, most of the companies I worked at, top companies to work for in New York State. And for me, being part of those cultures of companies that truly cared about their people were the only places I ever could work.
Mhm.
Because if you didn't care really about your people and you made hard decisions in a way that is not the place for me. So having the opportunity, I started at Wegmans. I was there for almost 5 years. I learned the food industry inside and out. They're a Fortune 500 company, phenomenal employer. And then I went to American General Life Insurance Company. I learned that industry. They're based out of Houston. They're huge. Then I was at a law firm, a labor law firm. So I got really dialed into my labor law. And then one of the final jobs before joining our family business and technology was setting up an HR department for Buffalo Hearing and Speech Center, which is the second largest hearing and speech center in the country. And they're the ones that did the cochlear implants for hearing.
Wow.
So
Wow.
all these different industries, all these different things. And you know what? At the end of the day, people just wanted to be valued. They wanted a purpose. They wanted to be acknowledged for a job well done. It's not rocket science. And I was thrilled to be a piece of that.
Wow. That's so good. Like to highlight your own individual strengths while you're in that, like be in a place where that is being done. And a lot of people aren't in places like that, or they're not in a place where they're passionate and feel a sense of purpose in the work that they're doing. But how critical that is to creating that culture that makes people feel like they're thriving at work. And from an HR perspective, you have a direct hand in seeing that change for your employees. I'm curious what implementations or what did you find common throughout those companies that you worked at? By the way, my grandmother worked her entire life at American General, so
She
fond to my
did?
heart. She did her
Oh my gosh.
entire life.
What a
Um,
smile.
yeah, what was the common thread, or what were some things that were implemented that created the cultures that make you talk so highly about these companies?
You know, and as cliche, you're younger than I am, and maybe people still say this, but as cliche as it may sound, is the open door policy and walk the walk, talk the talk, you know? Because I think every organization, it's got to start from the top. If you say, as the leader, I have an open door policy, but you never walk the floor, you never do a lunch and learn, you never show up at the lunch and learns, you don't do any kind of all employee meeting to really share the vision and the mission in your words. It's just words on the website and words in the manual, you know? So
Mhm.
for me, it's got to be start at the top, and you have to walk the walk. Number one. Number two, you have to be transparent and honest. Every organization, and then, you know, a couple come to mind that they could tell you bad news and you wouldn't feel bad,
Mhm.
because as bad as you would think,
Mhm.
because they let you know what was going on as things were. They weren't coming on and saying everything is amazing, everything, right? When they knew it wasn't. And not to say they want to be alarmist and gloom and doom, but share the financials, right? Share what's going on in the organization. Share that a new competitor came into play. Share that, you know, you worry about losing X customer base because of whatever other change going on in the world. Because those people, the team, can become part of the solution. So the organizations that were vulnerable enough, and I got
Very.
goosebumps right there when I just said vulnerable, the leaders that were vulnerable enough to say, I know a lot of the answers, but I don't know all the answers, and ask the people
Mhm.
to be part of the solution. Game changer.
Yes.
Game changer. Because even if some of those ideas were implemented and it didn't work, the fact that it's a shared experience, you know, and the fact that they were asked and that everyone was, you know, all hands in is huge. Is
Mhm.
huge. And so I think that was what was so successful at Wegmans, that was so successful at Anise and Associates, that was so successful at American General Life Insurance Company. They told you what was going on. So communication is number one. So that's where my communication came in.
Yeah, you
Communicate,
took the
communicate,
words.
and communicate again.
Yes, you took the words right out of my mouth when I heard you talking about share the financials, share the mistakes, share that you don't have the answers. All of those things, that is flexing your vulnerability muscle. That is embracing vulnerability as a leader and seeing that have an impact on the overall organization. Because one of the things that vulnerability helps to create is a sense of psychological safety, shared belief that we can make mistakes, we can take risk without the fear of humiliation, and we have value. And that is the whole message behind vulnerability muscle, that it can help us in our personal lives but also in our professional lives as well. And you demonstrated that beautifully with all of your experience in the corporate space. So thank you for sharing that. And I want to transition into something that is also very vulnerable and a deep passion of yours, and that is the adoption space. And I knew as soon as I said that you were gonna brighten up and your smile was gonna you were gonna smile.
Mhm.
I wanna first start with, where does that passion come from? And I think I learned a little bit today of hearing about your mom's story, but I think I read 8 out of the 11 grandchildren in your family are have an adoption story. Tell us about that.
Mhm. Yeah, well, you started the story with me imagining as a little girl, so you already got a little view into, I always wanted to go to college, I always wanted the job, I always wanted the nice husband, um, but being a mom was number 1. I had to be a mom, I was made to be a mom. I haven't shared this story in a while, but my sisters actually gave me Mother's Day cards until I was a sophomore in college. Even though I was the youngest out of the 4 of us, I was the one that was given, like, the list of the things that had to be done. I was the responsible one. I was the one, um, that was always invited to go somewhere if things needed to make sure things got done the way they needed to get done. So finally, my sophomore year in college, I said, "Come on, girls, you need to retire. You need to now go take care of your own selves." And so I'm retired from being your mothers. So it was just one of those natural things. It wasn't like anything I worked. It was just like I love taking care of people, and I just envisioned having a big family. And so, long story short, 2 of my sisters, pretty much back to back, we're all 4 girls in 5 years, so we're very close in age. And 2 sisters had shared infertility issues, and we're also in the process of adopting. And I thought that's awesome. That's it's a beautiful thing. And even before I learned that my infertility issue, my husband and I already had an eye on wanting to adopt somewhere, somehow. We didn't know what that looked like. But having seen my sisters adopt and their children come into our world was huge, and I learned so much through that process. And I love them with all my heart. And so when I went to my 3rd round of in vitro, and I knew I was 3 and done, that was it. Dr. John, my amazing doctor, I walked in the office for my evaluation after the last visit with him, and he was crying. I go, "What are you crying for? What are you crying?" He said, "You're not pregnant." I go, "That's okay." He goes, "What do you mean that's okay?" I said, "Dr. John, I'm going to be a mom. It's just not
Mm,
going to happen this way." He
mm,
goes, "How are you so confident?" I said, it's not going to happen this way. I'm a person of faith, and I think there's a bigger plan." And that was October. In November, a birth mother chose my husband and I, and our son was born in December. And
mm,
Dr. John got a birth announcement. And
mm,
he called me. He's like, "Francine," I can't do a Polish accent. "The babies I make, I don't see, but I don't make your baby." And I see. And I said, "I wanted you to know. I didn't want you to be sad. I
mm.
wanted you to know." And fast forward 2.5 years to the day, number 2 came. And then 2.5 years, almost to the day, number 3 came. And when I share that my son's birth mothers will be forever my heroes, is the truth. So they're the unsung heroes.
Mm. Wow, that is so touching. Um, I moved just hearing you, the excitement of knowing that you were meant to be a mother, and then to have the hope, even after in vitro didn't take, to know that you were still going to be a mother and
Yes.
just in a different way. And I think going back to a conversation earlier about life happening and plans getting redirected. You didn't let that stop you from becoming a mother, um, and to honor the birth mothers of your children in that way, I think is extremely special. Um, you have taken your own experience and you've provided services, you've provided a way to reflect and learn and grow through soul filling. Um, Tell me about just taking your passion from your own personal experience and applying that to others and what you've gained from that process. Because it's one thing to go through something yourself, but then to help and witness other people through it. I think there's a lot to be gained there. So, what have you gained from that?
You know, what's the expression? Life is what happens when you're busy making plans, and as you're raising your family, I didn't really think about all that I did. I always worked, but my kids were my first and foremost priority. Um, but you're busy, right? It's three kids. I had three kids in 5 years. And personally, I never lost sight of their birth mothers. And so one of the hardest things is knowing that my win, my gain of being a mother, they now had to go on and live without raising their child for whatever reason. And that's a hard thing to come to terms with, right? In life, there's a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense. And in starting So Filling, the reason why I started So Filling is to help make the conversation of adoption more mainstream at home, work, and school, and to help bring to light a more balanced conversation. Where in 2026, Reggie, as you can imagine, at some level, adoptions have evolved so much. I mean, in the 30s and 40s and 50s, you know the unthinkable things happen within the adoption space, and I'm sure to this day some things still do today. um but for me, and my mission with Soul Filling, my work is, if there's any way I could elevate the birth mother story, because if you know one birth mother, you don't know every birth mother. If you know one adoptive mom, you don't know every adoptive mom, and if you know one adoptee, you don't know every adoptee. And
Hmm.
we all, like every human, has our own lived experience. And some are harder than others. Some have more trauma than others. Some have more joy than others. Some are harder to hear than others. And so for me, starting Soul Filling was to bring to light these different stories and to show that even in spite, and only at the right time, when they've addressed the complexity and the challenge and the trauma, if they have that in their story, where their story, I want them to create this possibility that they too can thrive and that they too can flourish. And whether you're a birth mother or you're an adoptee or you're an adoptive mom, we're more alike than different, right? Birth mom had a child that she wasn't able to raise for whatever reason. And that's her loss. My loss is as a woman being able to have a child. An adoptee's loss is not being able to live with birth family. And so we all come from a piece of loss.
Mm.
And the most meaningful conversations I've had since starting Soul Filling is when I've been able to bring into the one conversation, and it was for a Mother's Day podcast, a birth mother, an adoptee who's a mom, an adoptive mom, and also a person who is an adoptee and adopted a child and gave birth to a child. And I share that because it was probably one of the most beautiful conversations that I've ever had, because we're all on the same darn team. We're all on the same
Yeah.
team. And if soul filling can move the needle a little bit to elevate the adoption conversation, so that in 2026, if somebody says they were adopted, somebody then can say, "That's interesting. I'd love to hear more about your story sometime," as opposed to hearing, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know."
Hmm.
It automatically leads to an apology, this uncomfortableness, this, "Oh, we don't talk about this. They're adopted. We don't talk about." And for me, that was never our family story out of all of our children. I mean, my kids knew I was in the delivery room for all three of our kids. I cut the cord for all three of my sons. And from the minute they were born, they knew adoption was a piece of their story. And they
Mm.
knew their birth families made the best choice they could be, and that they were never a mistake. It was an opportunity, a choice that they needed to make for them in that moment, that it had nothing to do with them. And so if I can move even someone not touched by adoption to understand it in some level, to make those who are touched by adoption just like, yeah, it's a piece of my story. It's not my whole story, but it's a piece of it. Then I've done my job.
Beautiful. Beautifully stated. You bring up something that is, I think, part of the complexity of it all is that with all of those losses that you mentioned comes a lot of grief. There's grief from the birth mother. There's grief from the adoptive mother. There's grief from the adoptee. But on the counter side of that grief is also gratitude. And so you're holding grief and gratitude in this adoption process for all three of those parties as well, because without this process coming to be, then where does this child end up? Where does that birth mother end up? What, all different things. And you do such a beautiful job of honoring both the grief and the gratitude without minimizing it at all.
Mm,
It's just such a beautifully human experience that you've described, and it's helped me see and understand this process, even in this short conversation, the process of adoption a little bit better, to have even more compassion and even more empathy for it all, because it's things that I have not considered. I've not seen life from that perspective. Oh man, you just made me emotional. Wait, wait, wait. I haven't I didn't see life from that perspective, but it could have been that way. I don't know how much I've shared in class or things, but like my mom had me when she was 14 years old. And this goes back to that poem I was talking about with the very just complicated relationship with family. And I've heard multiple, okay, on multiple occasions of how lives would have been better had I just been aborted. And I think, well, one, I know that no kid deserves to hear that, especially from their mother. Um, but I honor her story because, again, 14 years old with whatever life had dealt her, that's a very complicated place to be. And perhaps if the abortion wasn't the route, or the life that I ended up experiencing was the route, then adoption could have been that route, very likely. And to see that there are people like you in this world who I could have fallen in the hands of, it just gives me so much hope and so much gratitude for all that you are and everything that you do. So thank you for being you.
mm. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know all that, Reggie. I didn't know that.
Definitely. You talked about helping people understand adoption. And I'm curious what you've seen are the biggest misconceptions or misunderstandings about adoption or the adoption process.
The two things that really come to mind, that quite honestly, I was I don't know if the word surprised is the right word, but having coming into soul filling with almost 25 years of over 25 years of lived experience, because Soul Filling's just a toddler. She's only a few years old. Um, I came in, you know, thinking that we've made so much progress in adoption, right? Adoption has evolved so much. Adoption's more open. There's adoption competent therapists now.
Mhm.
There's a lot of reunions going on, birth families meeting children. There's better laws. The bad adoption agencies are being shut down. International adoption. But there's always more work to be done. But I was surprised at, from a social media standpoint, just how much division that there was on social media. Birth mothers talking to birth mothers, adoptees talking to adoptees, adoptive parents talking to adoptive parents. And so there's silos. And then I also saw this chasm of adoption is beautiful. It's such a gift. It's a win-win. And then people who are really angry with adoption. I mean, there's a lot of not great adoptive parents out there, Reggie, as you can imagine, just like there's not a lot of good whoever, right? So children that were adopted into families that they weren't a good fit. And those adoptees have every right to be angry, right? Because now they're experiencing loss and challenge a second time. And so for me, it was really getting my head around doing just what you said. And I want to be able to say how you said it, that the complexities of it, but also witnessing the possibility as well, that even though it's hard, and even though the system and adoption has not done well for people for whatever reason, it's still a beautiful option and is still a great option for many people. And
What
I
is
don't
flourishing?
talk about that enough.
Mm. What does flourishing look like in the adoption space? How do you see that?
So for me, the phrase in common in the adoption space is both and. So you touched on it a little bit. Like, I can have gratitude for the life I have, and I love the family that raised me, and I love, right? And I can also feel grief of what could have been. And I can hold those together. So for me, flourishing is never denying the hard, never denying and raising your hand and saying, I don't like this. I wish this didn't happen. This chapter's great, but I'd like to take that character out. And so for me, if there would be, I was asked to write an article for the National Adoption Council, and it's called The Truth Lies in the Middle. The truth is in the middle. It's never on the extremes. The truth is in the middle. And I quoted in the article of quotes from birth mothers, quotes from adoptive moms, and quotes from adoptees. Because when you hear all the voices, then you have the truth. If you just sit and I just talk to adoptive moms who are so grateful for being adoptive moms and so grateful they became moms and they're so happy, I'm missing a big piece of it. If I just focus just on my kids and their joy I'm missing it. If I just talk to the birth moms, I'm missing it. So the truth is somewhere in the middle, where you give everyone that voice and you recognize that even if you heard those voices from some people, that was that moment in time. And there's a million other stories of variation. So give them the grace to have their own story. And some people won't be ready to flourish yet. And that's my struggle, because remember, I started as a sociology major because I want everyone to flourish. I want you to flourish. I want the people I never met to flourish. I want my kids to flourish. I want my birth mothers to flourish. But some aren't ready to flourish yet. And
Definitely.
so my hope and my prayer is always that they're able to see something when they're ready somewhere, that then they can grab onto and be like, okay, I'm ready now. I'm ready to read that book. I'm
Mhm.
ready to do that workshop. I'm
Mm.
ready to do something different. I want to feel better and think differently. That's my
Wow.
hope.
Wow. 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 You have moved me emotionally. You've uh engaged me cognitively. Like I'm thinking, and I feel like there's so much that is that can be done, that is being done, and you're a big part of that in this space. And I've 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 gotten a sense of your passion in class around the adoption space, but I feel like I got just so much more of a richer experience in this conversation. I wanna I hope that everybody who has experienced or will experience um an adoption story, or who is curious about it, I think everyone should be, to expand their empathy, that they listen to this, because the way that you communicate that, and the emotion and the passion that you have behind it, is so powerful. It's so uplifting while also honoring the both and that is, I think, thinking about positive psychology and some of the criticism that it's got of that it's not honoring the both and that it is, head in the sand and all rainbows and sunshine. That's not the case, actually. And I think you, as a positive psychology practitioner, you've demonstrated that today. Thank you, my friend. That's
Thank
so
you.
beautiful.
Thank you. And I was challenged. I think I shared it in class. I was challenged by someone. Um,
Can you tell us about that? Because that was powerful.
mhm. Yeah, just last week I was challenged. I had a conversation with someone who is very deeply involved within the adoption community as a therapist, trauma therapist. And it was just, I reached out because I like to connect with people and I want to learn from people. And we had a fairly brief conversation. I said, thank you so much. And then she followed up with a message just saying that she feels positive psychology is nothing short of cruel within the adoption space, and that trying to help or involve people in positive psychology is um, negating their trauma and their challenges and their difficulties. And I was completely misunderstood. And so I sat with that. I had to sleep on that because I didn't want to be too quick to respond. And I was on my way to Lemoyne I was so pumped up because I got that message as I was going to my alumni, my old college, to do a talk. And I'm like, Franny, stay focused where you're going. You'll address that later. But I sent her a just very clear message. This is what positive psychology is. This is the opportunity that I think it can bring to this space. And I would never, ever negate someone to not address their trauma and their difficulties in a way that best suits them through traditional therapy or otherwise. And so I just felt very strongly I needed to respond and let her know that I needed another opportunity to make sure she understood what it was. And I haven't gotten a response yet, but that's okay. And honestly, Reggie, to be honest, she was on my prayer that
Mhm.
day because my heart was, I think she's probably hurting and she looks through, and I think she's probably seen a lot more than I've ever seen in adoption as a therapist. So I respect her position because she's seen things I've never seen. But I also want her to honor that and also create possibility of being able to put those words flourishing and thriving in your adoption story
Yes. Yes. Oh, this has been so
sometime,
fantastic.
right? Sometime.
Mhm. Mhm. And I'll point listeners to an episode of an adoptee who was on the show, Ed DeGanji. He tells his story of being adopted, and for me, going in with the assumptions that it was a traumatic experience for him, he totally debunked that for me. And he talks about his experience and his adoptive parents, and just the way in which he uncovered that he was adopted. He found out long after his adoptive parents were passed away, when he was cleaning out their desk for after they had passed, and found a letter from his adoptive mother. And so it's people have different experiences, and I think one of the greatest challenges of our humanity is that we try to strip experiences from others because of what our experience has been. And though I think there are many people who experience the trauma and the pain that is associated with it, there are also folks who do see good from it and have a story like Ed's. And so thank you for sharing that. And I mean, so kudos to you, and I'm just so proud of you for your compassion and courage to reach out to her in a compassionate way. So thank you for that.
Of
Before we
course.
close, though, I have a quick rapid response segment, and so you tell me the first thing that comes to mind, and then we'll start to wrap it up.
Okay.
Mm. Belonging means blank.
Love.
Mm. Family is not blank; it's blank.
Family is not perfect, it's human.
Mm. If I could tell young Franny anything, it would be blank.
Trust the process.
And right now, I am most hopeful about blank.
Graduation. Yeah.
Amen. Yes. Oh man, Francine Apy, you are a gift to this world. You're a gift to the MAP community, and you're a gift to the adoption space, and so many other communities that you've been involved in. Thank you so much for sharing so much emotion, so much heart, so much passion for what you do and who you serve. It is clear. It is clear that you love and that you are creating spaces where people feel that. And I am so honored to have been a witness and a recipient of that love. Is there any final things that you wish I had asked you, that you want to get off your chest, that you want to vent about, anything like that?
Well, I would first and foremost like to say thank you to you and give you all those adjectives you just gave me right back to you. Because you, when I walked in the classroom and I saw your smile and your light and your vulnerability that you showed us in class, in your heart and your intelligence. It's an honor to know you. And when I heard you had a podcast, and I love a podcast, I was so thrilled that you said, "Yeah, you can be a guest on my podcast." So I so appreciate the opportunity, genuinely, and it's an honor to have met you, Reggie. Really.
I received those words. Thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you if they want to work with you? You do coaching, you do workshops, you speak. How can people reach you?
Sure. So the two websites are francineapy.com, which is what I do with my culture and business HR work. And then the soulfillingadoption.com is my website for my work. But LinkedIn kind of connects me to everything. So that's just Francine Apy on LinkedIn.
Francine Apy. I'll include that in the show notes. Well, Francine, thank you so much for today. Just the complexity, the both, and the life that you have journeyed through to understand people and culture and community, and really prioritizing what matters the most in life. And I think that is the love that you share, the light, and seeing other people's strengths and bringing that out in them. You have done some amazing things, and you've become an amazing person. And one thing that I'm really proud of is the mother that you are. I can You talk about your kids with this bright smile on your face, and your eyes get really big, and I cannot wait to meet them. But I am so proud of you and the mother that you are. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Francine, with all the things that you could be doing and all the places you could be, I appreciate you being here at me, embracing vulnerability.
Awesome. This was great. I so appreciate the time, really.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of Vulnerability Muscle. If you've enjoyed these conversations around vulnerability, please consider leaving a review. Your feedback not only motivates us to continue to do the work that we do, but it allows other people to witness the power of vulnerability. Share your thoughts on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And don't forget to spread the word. You can follow us at Vulnerability Muscle on Instagram and me personally at Reggie D Ford across all platforms. Visit vulnerabilitymuscle.com for additional resources and support. And remember, embracing vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It is the source of your greatest strength. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but most workouts are. So keep flexing that vulnerability muscle.